Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Grudniblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of Zero G Draft Strategy, and contributor to Yahoo Fantasy. In this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Let's get it. And welcome on in, everybody. I'm glad to see those of you live here on the stream on YouTube. I'm doing this every Monday at 8 p.m. EST all season long, with the notable exception of next week when I'm going to be going to the Broncos at the Bills. So won't be doing it next week. There will be something else coming out in place of this then, but yeah, just a heads up from me to you for next week. There won't be a live stream, but every other week this season you can expect one moving forward. Let's dive in with some newsies, and then we'll get to the puzzling players as submitted by the Apples and Ginos Discord. So right now I've got obviously the Frederick Anderson news. He's out blood clotting. Obviously, just a kind of bad situation. Hope all the best for him. Yeah, tough to see for sure. And yeah, hopefully it's something they can get straightened out fairly quickly. But as of now, it's an indefinite timeline, so we'll just have to kind of wait and see. Eero Halak is getting a look there. Was called in for a professional tryout. Assume he'll join them there. Really, it's hard to say what'll happen. I assume Ranta would take the majority of the work there, but there's plenty of different ways that cookie could crumble. If he doesn't play super well, then they might go to Kochetkov. They did that last year, obviously, and Kochetkov had a really solid month and then was kind of never heard from again after that. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that could go, but definitely the Carolina net is somewhere that you really want to be interested in. So it's definitely worth seeing what they do in the early going here. Michael says, get to biz. That's absolutely what we're planning to do here on this podcast. Bo Horvat is day-to-day, will be reevaluated tomorrow. Apparently he blocked a shot off his left ankle on Saturday. He did miss practice today on Monday. So that's not good. A couple days later, he's still missing practice. But obviously, I think it would have come out by now if it was actually broken or something like that. So probably dealing with some sort of pretty decent bruise. Yeah, probably just a pain thing at this point, and see how he does tomorrow, and they'll take it from there. Just consider him day-to-day for now. Matt Duchene also considered day-to-day by the Dallas Stars. He is missing the game tonight. They did confirm that. I believe Dallas Stars play again on Thursday, so I would anticipate most likely that he's back for that game. If you are streaming from the Dallas Stars, I would anticipate that he'd be back Thursday against Columbus. Dylan Cousins is not practicing yet. Apparently, the hope is that he will join the team for practice in a few days. That's not a great look overall. This is all stemming from a fight that he picked with Garnet Hathaway. A little bit out of his weight class there, I would say, but good on him, I guess. But yeah, it sounds like tomorrow's tilt against Carolina is probably in doubt. So that's not a great look for Dylan Cousins, but hopefully for the end of the week he can return. Another Dylan Larkin upper body injury will be evaluated in the morning. And the quote from Derek Lalonde is that he hopes he will be available for their game, also going tomorrow against the New York Rangers. So hopefully you get Larkin for tomorrow, but you may have to consider some other plans there as well. If he's not there, it's just it's pretty terrible for everybody else. They don't have a ton of great center depth. They have guys who can play center, no doubt, but just not great depth, especially for fantasy purposes. All right, that's it for the newsies. So we can get back into this. Blake says, damn right, get to biz. That's right. And also, Jenner already has a goal tonight. I did see that. That's what we like to see. He said this hurts. Fair enough. Michael's asking, should we be worried about Matthew Tkachuk? Tkachuk is on the list, and we will definitely get at least that far tonight. So hang on to your hats. We'll get there for sure. I'm going to start from the top here. These were the highest voted on in the Apples and Genos Discord server. If you're joining us from somewhere else and you're unaware, basically what I do every Monday is I put out a call to the Apples and Genos Discord server and I say, who do you want me to talk about? Who are the most puzzling players for fantasy currently? And everybody submits their names, and the people give thumbs up to the players that they want to hear about the most. Zach Werenski, the player that the people wanted to hear about the absolute most this week. So that's where we'll start. Werenski has 3 points, all assists in his last 5 games, obviously not including the game that's currently going on. I don't believe he has a point in the game. Just started the second period there. And no, he doesn't have a point. He's a -2. But Werenski, a guy that I've been a vocal believer in for quite some time. And honestly, his stats still look pretty good, even in this last little stretch. Almost 25 minutes average time on ice, 40th amongst defensemen shots per 60, 16th in individual Corsi 4 per 60, and 16th in on ice Corsi 4 per, on ice shot attempts, basically Corsi 4 per 60, and 64th in scoring chances 4 per 60. I'm actually those are pretty nice numbers for Zach Werenski, especially given that it's Columbus, right? He's skating a ton of minutes on Columbus, and his Corsi 4 per 60 is still that high with that kind of usage. That's pretty nice, honestly, for Zach Werenski. On the season, he's got 6 points in 9 games. That's a 55-point pace. Pretty solid stuff. Like, realistically, I don't know how much you could really want from Zach Werenski. I mean, you could want a few more points, sure. On ice shooting percentage here is just 6%. That's going to go up. The IPP's definitely come down. He's got that up at 75%, but those two will offset. And yeah, 55, 60 points should live in that area quite comfortably with opportunity for more. I think I projected him for over 60 points and about 20 goals. Still think that's plenty reasonable. Hasn't quite elevated to that kind of elite shot level that he's provided in the past, but it's a young season. He did have an early injury. You know, he's got lots of time to improve. So I'm pretty bullish on Werenski still. I don't see anything under the hood to take me off of that. In fact, the on-ice Corsi 4 rank, both from this last 5-game stretch and on the season, is really, really solid on a team like Columbus. So very much all the way still in on Zach Werenski. We're getting some more comments. Connor says, I hope we're worried about Matthew Tkachuk because I'm facing the guy who has him in one of my 2 leagues. Fair enough. Well, as I teased before, we will get there. Rover Spine? Not sure how to say that, but he says, Rossi going to stack goals this week. I hope so. I picked up Rossi in a few spots. If you watched our waiver wire episode or listened to that podcast, then you know that we are definitely interested in Rossi as well. Casual Bowl of Ramen says, why is Verhaeghe the way that he is? Yeah, it's not been terrific for Carter Verhaeghe, but again, I'm fairly unconcerned about most of Florida. They're down their top 2 defensemen. Like, people really don't realize how bad that usually is. The Leafs have lost not even their top 2 defensemen, and they look like an absolute tire fire defensively since that point. And so, to me, it's just completely unsurprising if some of the Florida players are not living up to complete expectations. Michael asks, are we worried about the Oilers this year? Will they get 20 wins this year? Yes, the Oilers, I feel pretty confident in saying we'll reach 20 wins this year. Honestly, the Oilers, their underlying stats look really quite solid. I'm wildly unconcerned about the Oilers as a team and their ability to figure it out at some point. At 5v5 on the season, they're second in Corsi 4 percentage, and they are 5th in scoring chance 4 percentage. They're going to figure it out. No concerns about the Oilers whatsoever. Connor Clark says the Oilers get 40 plus wins. Book it. Yeah, I would book that too. Nyes with 2 goals now, John says. I haven't been checking the score since I started. That's nice. Definitely, we're interested in Mr. Nyes, and I said as much in the podcast the other day. Oh, I'm seeing it as Matthew's goal. Maybe it got moved around. We'll see, I guess. But yeah, Nice to see that Nyes is clicking right away on the top line. Kind of makes sense. I thought that he actually was a stylistic fit for that top line, so I'm definitely interested in that. Toronto Dave saying Wool over Samsonov. Nice. I totally agree. I don't know how you could have a different take this far into the season, honestly. Sergachev, Simon says, can we actually drop him? I would not be dropping Sergachev. I think he's got a point or two tonight. Yeah, he's got an assist tonight. He's still going to skate a ton of minutes. The Lightning will do this on occasion. And I mean, before Sergachev got all that power play time last year, he was still a plenty rosterable fantasy defenseman. And he was just more like a 40, 45, maybe 50 point pace player at certain times throughout the season. And so that's who he is. If that's not good enough for your league, if you're in a smaller league, shallower league, then you can let him go. But in most 12 and above team leagues, I think Sergachev is fine. He's just probably not living up to expectation where you drafted him. Will the Sharks break the 74-75 Caps record for basically the worst team in the league of all time? Definitely trending that way. It's too early to call for sure, but yeah, definitely trending that way. Ian asking, should I continue to stack Jeek and Hartman with Rossi getting that line one, power play one? Yeah, you can. I don't think that I'm off of those two guys, especially for this week. I would see how this week goes. You know, if Hartman goes cold again, Hartman has gone kind of hot and cold throughout his career. So I definitely don't mind it for this week with the good schedule there in Minnesota. But beyond that, I would still continuously kind of reassess, especially with Hartman. Jeek, I think, has a lot more value, saying in the categories league. Yeah, if you've got hits, then Jeek really has a ton of value for sure. Aztec asking Nelson and a second for Otter. I get Otter. Should I take? I'm never going to advocate for trading four goalies. You'll hear me say that a bunch of times. Yeah, I'm just never going to be advocating for you to trade for a goalie, especially for Nelson and a high draft pick. Mike asks, is Luke Hughes a sell high? If you can get something really decent for him, I could see it. It really depends what people are thinking of him. Usually it takes a little while for people to get on board, but Hughes has had a lot of hype, and rightfully so. Yeah, if you can get full price, full sticker price as a power play one defenseman on New Jersey rest of season, if that's what people's expectations of Luke Hughes are, then you can sell, because I do think that there's probably going to be a chance at some point. Rookies are just unpredictable. I say this every single year. Rookies go through these stretches. They get through cold stretches. They have hot stretches. Sometimes it's at the start of the season. Sometimes it's in the middle. Sometimes it's at the end. But almost all rookies, very few rookies have just kind of like a linear ascent in their rookie season. And so I do anticipate that there will be a stretch at some point this season where Luke Hughes gets bumped down. And then at that point, he's really not going to be worth all that much to you, because he doesn't provide a ton outside of those power play points. Nimmer asks, is Jake Gensel a sell high at the moment? Let me take a look at Gensel's stats real quick. He's got 7 points his last 5 games. The on-ice stats are terrific with Jake Gensel. Probably the best, honestly, it's ever been in his career. And I'm going to say that he's probably a sell high if you can sell him at the current 107 point pace that he's on for the season. I don't think you're going to get that for Jake Gensel. I think everybody kind of views him as a point per game player. At that level, I think I'm hanging on to Jake Gensel. He's exhibiting a really high level of play. The Pittsburgh offense right now is really clicking. I know they've talked about like power play and Carlson not doing so well, those kind of things, but overall, I'm pretty unconcerned with Pittsburgh as a team. Jake Gensel, pretty unconcerned as well. I think he's actually showing out better than maybe I thought he would this far in the season. Selling high on Vetrano, absolutely, I'd sell high on Vetrano if you can. It depends how high. If somebody's going to view him as the kind of player that he has been so far and expect that that continues all season long, definitely sell high. If someone's only viewing him slightly better than a streamer, then that's not really selling high. Then I just ride him until the wheels fall off and then drop him again. Isaac asking, time to give up on Huberdeau. Yeah, You can. It's really hard to see right now what the path towards things getting better is there in Calgary. I think it starts with some trades. They've apparently already explored some big trades. Lindholm, Hannafin, they've decided to not explore the long term contracts with. It sounds like it could be a little bit of a teardown there, quite honestly. Greg asking Byfield or Rossi rest of season, both available in my league. That is a very tough one. I would take Rossi right now just because of the greater deployment. That being said, if Byfield were to get on power play one, he could have just as high a ceiling and perhaps a higher ceiling for the rest of the season. But as of right now, I think you chase it with Rossi. He's got a great schedule this week. Both of them have a decent schedule this week, but Rossi has a terrific schedule this week. Right now, line one, power play one, and cooking between Kaprizov and Boldy. So I go Rossi there. Alan asking, can you explain ICF and the other stats? Yeah, I can do that real quick. So ICF is the I stands for individual, so it's what that player is individually doing. Corsi 4 is just shot attempts. Anytime that they try to direct a shot towards the net, they get a point, Corsi 4 point, much in the way that you would get a shot if it actually hit the goaltender or went in the net. And then individual scoring chances for per 60. That's if the chance comes from a certain area that's labeled as a more dangerous place to shoot the puck from. So those have some like locational or I guess geographic restrictions on whether every shot attempt is labeled as a scoring chance. They have to fall within certain locations and criteria to meet the criteria for a scoring chance. And then the on ice numbers are the ones without the I in front of them. Those are the team numbers when that player is on the ice. So Corsi 4 per 60, you'll hear me say that, or on ice Corsi 4 per 60. That's what the team is doing. That's their rank. So let me backtrack. 16th is Zach Werenski's rank amongst all defensemen in this statistic. The Corsi 4 per 60 number that he is generating is the amount of shot attempts per 60 minutes directed by his entire team while he's on the ice. So generally, the greatest playmakers or play drivers have high numbers in Corsi 4, and the ones that can really set up players in the high scoring chance areas get these high scoring chance 4 per 60 numbers as well. So we like to see that. IPP is individual points percentage. So, of all the goals that were scored while they were on the ice, what percentage did they factor into? What percentage did they get the goal or get an assist on that goal? S percentage here is shooting percentage. So, what percentage of their shots actually went in the net and resulted in a goal? On ice shooting percentage, that is the shooting percentage of the entire team while they are on the ice. So, quick breakdown there for you. I got to get back into this. We've had tons of comments. It's great. Love to see the interaction. You can keep them coming, but I've got to get through some of these players here as well. Drake Batherson is one that keeps coming up for sure. 2 goals, 1 assist, 3 points in his last 5 games. Not a terrible stretch, just under 18 minutes average time on ice. His individual numbers have started to creep back up, 70th in shots per 60 and 36th in individual scoring chances for per 60. That's a nice number. The on-ice numbers, not so kind, so he's doing it pretty well himself, but the team around him when he's on the ice is not doing it quite as well. You'd like to be able to see him elevate the team a little bit, but at the same time, you would also expect that he should be able to get some support from his teammates while he's on the ice. So they did kind of throw the lines for a little bit of a blend there in their last game against the Lightning. So we'll see what shakes out in the next game here. But overall, I'm still just not that concerned about Batherson. I had a pretty bullish projection on him. I believe it was over 70 points, if I remember correctly, at the start of the season. I don't know that he's going to hit that number anymore. Right now, he's pacing for 41 points, but I still think that it's not unreasonable to think that he could pace for around 70 points from this point onward. And the underlying stats are pretty solid still, and he just kind of needs a few more pucks to go in the net and to factor in on a higher IPP, which is something that he has done in the past. So that's generally IPP. The individual points percentage is something that does tend to regress towards their mean, what they normally do. And so I do think that Batherson will get a bump there. I think the on-ice shooting percentage should also come up. And even the shooting percentage should come up. So I do think that there's every reason to believe that Batherson, if he's starting to tick up in these individual stats that you see, then the rest may soon follow. And so I'm still pretty unconcerned with Batherson at the moment. If these numbers start to decline again and his deployment starts to wane, comes off of power play one, that's a totally different conversation. But at the moment, I don't personally have great concerns with Batherson. I'm considering him pretty much an everyday start, unless I've really got a team that's just totally set. Johnny Gaudreau, another one we need to talk about here. He's got a goal and an assist in his last 5 games, so only 2 points, 18 and a half minutes average time on ice. Did get benched in the third period. We did mention this on the podcast that came out today, Monday. So you can go check that out. And for more of us talking about that, basically, I'm not that concerned with Gaudreau overall. It's been a bit of a slow start for sure. He's got only 5 points in 11 games, but I mean, this is a guy they gave a ton of money to, and they're really invested in him. And honestly, Columbus should score more. Laine's been out. That hurts the power play. Everything has been kind of working against Gaudreau. Like on the season, 50% IPP, 3.1% shooting percentage, 7.1 on ice shooting percentage. All those numbers are set to rebound in a big way. And I don't see like obviously these recent numbers, 259th in shots per 60, 231st in individual scoring chances for per 60. Those are not great numbers. That's not what we expect from Johnny Gaudreau. But I think that this is a case where Gaudreau should rebound and rebound fairly shortly. I'm I'm expecting it, basically, is what I'm saying. I just feel like we have this pedigree with Gaudreau where he's done it and done it for multiple seasons at this point. Like last year, I think it was 73 points he had in 82 games, one of the more quiet 73-point seasons that anyone's ever had, just because Columbus wasn't that great. And so people assume that he had a really terrible season. He really didn't. Columbus as a team had a terrible season with a ton of injuries, but he really held his own last season. And so I'm not really just willing to throw all that out for a bad 11 game stretch to start the season this year. John Carlson, next on the list, has 3 assists in his last 5 games, skating over 27 minutes a night. 50th in these last 5 games in shots per 60, but 14th in individual scoring chances for per 60. On ice numbers even better, 21st in Corsi for per 60 and 10th in scoring chances for per 60 for John Klingberg. I'm still pretty unconcerned. You're going to hear me say this about a fair number of these teams. Washington had a pretty terrible start, but they've really rebounded. They're now kind of right in the middle of the league in Corsi 4 per 60. And I'm looking for them here. They're actually 10th in the league in scoring chances 4 per 60 at 5v5 right now. So that's a big rebound for the team. It seems like they're starting to figure things out a little bit under the new coach there, Spencer Carberry. I mean, on the season, John Carlson has 7 points in 10 games. He's on pace for a 58-point season. I don't really know what more you're expecting from John Carlson. I actually think he's got 70-point upside. Like, I don't think this is the low water mark for him by any stretch. On ice shooting percentage is just 7.1% on the season. I think that could go up. The IPP might come down a little bit, but he's still skating an incredible amount of minutes. I think the power play will get better from here. I just think John Carlson is about as safe as it comes. So if anybody in your league is out on John Carlson, you can get him for cheap. I'm absolutely about that move. Stuart Skinner here. Obviously, it's been a bit of a carousel. We'll see. If you're listening to the podcast, you already know the result of the 10 p.m. EST game between Edmonton and Vancouver. So you probably have more information than I do at this point on how Skinner was able to perform against Vancouver. Vancouver's been hot, but their underlying numbers have been terrible. So it's kind of a weird yeah, just kind of like a binary split between these two teams where Edmonton has all the underlying stats and none of the results, and Vancouver has all of the results and none of the underlying stats. We'll see if that kind of begins to normalize for both teams in the game here tonight. I think it's definitely possible that this is the night where it starts to trend back up. I heard the Keeping Carlson guys, I think Brian said that he thought that Stuart Skinner was the only one between Jack Campbell and Stuart Skinner that might actually take over this net. And I kind of feel like that's true. So I am rostering Skinner in a place where he was dropped. I picked him up because it's Edmonton. Their underlying stats look terrific. I think that Stuart Skinner could get hot again. He got hot last year. I'm not banking on it by any means, but if one of these two goalies was to get hot and hold down the net for a while, I do believe that it would be Skinner. And if he does, then it's going to be incredibly valuable for fantasy because I do think that Edmonton is a pretty solid team. All things considered, yes, they have problems with their bottom six, but so do a lot of teams that are able to mask those woes with their elite level talent. And so I do think that we're in a spot here with Edmonton where they will get untracked, and Stuart Skinner's might be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that. So that's my take on Skinner. I do think that if he's out there in your league, you should probably go ahead and pick him up if you did employ 0G and you're looking for a goalie. JT says, not a question, but Cripes Grease Matthews might go for 80. Yeah, I just checked over on the score. It's now 4-3 for Tampa, and Matthews has 2 goals and an assist. That's looking pretty solid. Yeah, I've got Matthews in a couple places, and so I'm feeling that. Last week, I said it on the podcast that came out today on the flagship weekly show that I got Matthews on Saturday night in Kikuffle, but it helped me in my other leagues. So it was one of those where it helps me in some spots and goes against me in others. But overall, love to see it as a Leafs fan as well. Michael's in here. He's saying that goalies are voodoo. Definitely. You have to agree with that. While we're here, I might as well talk about Joseph Woll, the only other goalie that was on the slate here. And I think, yeah, I mean, we're seeing it in this game. Samsonov stopped 4 of 8 shots against Tampa and then was taken out for Woll immediately. I think Woll has clearly outplayed Samsonov so far. And so I have Woll in one spot where I was able to pick him up before things got too crazy with his rostership, and I'm just going to hold him until Samsonov clearly outplays him, gets back-to-back starts, those kind of things. Until that happens, I'm holding Woll. I do think that the situation, Jake McCabe is close to getting back. I don't actually know the update on Liljegren, but when the Leafs do have their full complement of defensemen, I think things should get better there. And I think the team can outscore a lot of woes. So you should run into wins at the very least with Woll, even if the numbers don't look terrific all the time. So that's my take there. And I think that, yeah, I think that Woll has actually played pretty well. I don't think that the game on Saturday was really his fault. There were a couple goals that maybe he could have had, but overall, don't think it was his fault whatsoever. Josh says, are we dropping Klingberg? Now that he's off power play 1 despite a great scheduling week, I was close to dropping Klingberg regardless, even if he was on power play 1. So yes, I'm dropping John Klingberg. I probably would have, honestly, before this point. I've seen enough. Maybe, as I said, it's anti-Leafs bias from me as a Leafs fan, where if I see something bad on the Leafs, then I react more emotionally than analytically. But yeah, Klingberg is completely useless if he's not on power play 1. He has been completely useless while being on power play 1. So I think you can let Klingberg go. We've seen this show before with Klingberg, and that show ain't no good, to directly quote the great Blake Creamer. So that's what I'm doing with Klingberg. Let's keep rolling. We got to talk about Jason Robertson, who hasn't quite lived up to expectations. He's got 8 points in 10 games on the season, 4 in his last 5. Averaging just over 18 and a half minutes time on ice. The underlying stats have been kind of curiously not great for Robertson. 169th in the last 5 games in shots per 60, 119th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. Even the on-ice stuff, not great. 129th in Corsi, 4 per 60, 120th in scoring chances, 4 per 60. Dallas has continued to do pretty well. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit hard to figure out exactly what's going on. Overall, similar story to Gaudreau, but a little more muted, not quite as extreme as Gaudreau. I'm fairly unconcerned. I think Robertson will get back up there, and he should be over a point per game pretty comfortably. I think I projected him for 95-ish points. I'd have to go back and actually check that to tell you for sure. But I tend to think that these things are specifically for these elite players, right? Specifically for elite players like Jason Robertson has shown himself to be, like Johnny Gaudreau has shown himself to be, these are the kind of players that I just tend to believe until they give me a long stretch of play that proves something else, and then I start to actually be worried. Um, with the Stars playing well, maybe there's a case where he's taken his foot off the gas in games that they're ahead. Who knows? There's any number of reasons you could invent for this. But overall, I'm just not concerned yet. It's still too early in the season for me to be really concerned on Robertson, and I would still buy low if someone is trying to get off of him. So, Trevor Zegras has been a constant refrain on puzzling players and cold streaks and all the rest of it on shows all across the fantasy hockey community for sure. Has just one goal in his last 5 games, still averaging over 18 minutes a night. On ice numbers, not good. 254th in Corsi 4 per 60, 158th in scoring chances 4 per 60. He was shooting a bunch to open the season, and then that's fallen off. 155th in his last 5 games here in shots per 60 and 225th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. That's not great. Has just 2 points in 11 games to start the season. It's been said before, but he did have the kind of almost holdout situation where he didn't get a full training camp in. Maybe he's still getting untracked, getting up to game speed in some respects. But overall, I don't feel like I'm super worried about Trevor Zegras. He's still getting all the minutes. I don't really see like Frank Vetrano or any of these guys as a real threat. That line, even that the fact that that line has been producing so well with McTavish and Vetrano and Strome. I just don't think they have a reason to break that up yet. Maybe when they start to lose some games, they'll start to move things around, and Zegras could get bumped down the lineup. I just don't think that's all that likely in the end. So I'm fairly unconcerned. I don't know if I'm going out to buy Trevor Zegras low necessarily because yeah, who knows how long this could go on for. I might like to see, a couple games of life where the underlying stats tick up a little bit. Maybe you get a point or two, you get some confidence back, and then you're a little bit interested in getting back in on Zegras. Right now, I'm still not sure we've quite seen the bottom yet. It's probably close, but maybe not quite yet. That's my take on Trevor Zegras. Miro Heiskanen, we talked about. Actually, I'm just going to highlight a few guys that we did talk about already. So Miro Heiskanen and Dawson Mercer were a couple players we talked about, Blake and I, in the show that came out today, Monday. So if you're looking for our take on those guys, you should go check that out. I'm not going to repeat myself here too much. Mason McTavish, yeah, 4 goals, 8 points in his last 5 games. All this while averaging like 60 minutes, 15 seconds average time on ice here in those 5 games. 57th in shots per 60, 74th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. Good numbers, but not terrific. 217th in Corsi 4 per 60 and 198th in scoring chances 4 per 60. Those numbers are not all that great. And honestly, I thought about streaming McTavish out this week. He did get back on the top power play in this game. So that's kind of the only thing really keeping me back. If he had stayed off the top power play as he had been in the game prior, then I might have let McTavish go this week actually for a 4-game streamer that I might have been able to fit into my lineup. But I guess I'll stay in the flames a little longer with McTavish. Obviously, on the season, 13 points in 11 games, 97-point pace. The underlying stats are good. He's definitely overperforming to this point. If you can sell high on McTavish, I definitely would. But at the same time, McTavish, he's on Anaheim. He has the Anaheim off nights, which everybody knows and loves for fantasy purposes for your daily lineup leagues. So you don't have to move off McTavish by any stretch, but if you got somebody who thinks like this is the absolute breakout star of the season, he may be. But if you can get value for him now, then you're kind of like locking in that value in a sense. If you can get somebody who's slumping and somebody that you're really confident in, like if you can get Goudreau for Mason McTavish, there are probably some managers out there somewhere who would do that. If you could do that, I would absolutely do that kind of move. So, yeah, that's my general take. You don't have to sell McTavish. He is performing well enough under the hood that I'm reasonably confident that he'll be useful, but he's definitely playing a bit over his skis at this point and will come back down to earth. Chris Letang, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5 games, still averaging about 24.5 minutes time on ice. 111th amongst defensemen, shots per 60, 118th in individual scoring chances for per 60. That's a little bit concerning. He's never been a massive shot producer, but he's not been that bad either. So that's not great, but the on ice numbers are still terrific, especially considering he's not on the power play 1 unit in Pittsburgh currently. 19th in Corsi for per 60, 26th in scoring chances for per 60 over this last 5 game stretch. That's really, really solid stuff from Chris Letang. I'm just hanging on. I don't really see a reason to get off him at this point. He's pacing for 49 points on the season, 43% IPP. That sounds roughly about right. 5.6 shooting percentage, 9.9% on ice shooting percentage. I actually think the on ice shooting percentage has some room to move up. So, yeah, overall, I think Chris Letang, 50, 55 points as a power play 2 defenseman. And then if he ever does get back on power play 1, then you're really happy about it. So you're definitely going to have stretches for any defenseman that's not on the top power play where he's going to have, these 2 points in 5 games, even 1 point in 5 game stretches where you're going to be like, what's this guy really doing for me? But Chris Letang just gets so many minutes and is in a pretty solid offensive environment, as I mentioned, in Pittsburgh, that I'm just not going to be moved off them, to be honest. Matthew Tkachuk and Alexander Barkov all lumped together here. I will double check the score in that game just to see if there's anything new going on. Doesn't look like there's anything additional on the Florida side of things. I do see Columbus has tied it up 3-3, which is interesting to say the least. Tkachuk does not have a point, has 3 shots so far with 4:38 left in the second. Barkov has a goal on 3 shots. So that's not factoring into the stats that you see if you're watching on YouTube here. But Tkachuk has 5 points in his last 5 games. Barkov has 3 points in his last 4 games. Tkachuk's numbers under the hood are terrific. If somebody's selling low on Tkachuk right now, like selling him for, he was a first round pick in pretty much every league. If someone's selling him for a second round pick valuation at this point, I'm diving all over that at this moment. Tkachuk's still absolutely elite, and I would love to pick him up and add him to my rosters. Barkov, the shots per 60, curiously low, 228th in this last 4 games that he's played here, but 84th in individual scoring chances for per 60, which is about where he should land in most cases. And the on-ice numbers still really good. 34th in Corsi for per 60, 17th in scoring chances for per 60, all while skating over 21 minutes a night. So, yeah, I've got no concerns with Tkachuk or Barkov. If people are off them for whatever reason, even though they've had good, not great numbers to start the season, absolutely would smash that. As I mentioned, Montour and Ekblad being out is a much, much bigger effect than people, I think, are giving it credit for. I think that once Montour and Ekblad are back in the lineup, you can really see these guys start to take off in, the middle part, I guess, of the season here. So if there is a buy low opportunity for those guys, absolutely, I'm all about it. Jordan Kyrou, 3 points in his last 5 games, just the 1 goal, 17.5 minutes, roughly average time on ice, 8th in shots per 60. I'd like to see that, but 122nd in individual scoring chances for per 60, so maybe a few more shots from distance, really. 171st in Corsi for per 60 and 135th in scoring chances for per 60. That's not great. St. Louis has been a little better of late, and I think Kyrou is kind of one of the big 3, as I mentioned. Kyrou, Robert Thomas, Pavel Buchnevich. I think these guys will get untracked a little bit, even if the team as a whole is pretty terrible and continue to be terrible. I think that those 3 guys are good enough that they're still going to be plenty fantasy relevant, and they'll get enough exposure to each other that'll be helpful, and they should be pretty good. And one thing earlier in the season, St. Louis was running a true top power play unit, and they've kind of gone away from that as of late. That's too bad, because, if they continued to load up Buchnevich, Kyrou, Thomas on the top unit, and then honestly whoever around them, wouldn't really matter to me. Krug, Falk on the back end, Vrana, Shen, Saad, whoever they decided was the best 4th forward. That would be an ideal scenario. They did do it for a little bit. Now they've gotten away from it again. Hopefully they go back, because that's the scenario in which you actually really get some value out of these guys. Until then, I think they're just probably going to be decent, maybe a little less than we had hoped and expected from them, considering how bad St. Louis has been. But there's still upside for more. Berube could get himself fired. New coach could come in and hand them a whole ton of ice time and uh, kind of reinvigorate the team a little bit. There's lots of scenarios that could play out where these guys also exceed. So if people are off of these players, I've seen Buchnevich dropped and picked him up in a league where he was dropped. So if people in your league are totally off these players, just given how bad St. Louis is, and you can acquire them for next to nothing, I would definitely do that. Evan Rodriguez just 1 assist in his last 5 games, averaging over 18 minutes a night, but has been removed now from the top power play unit. Yeah, I kind of saw this coming, to be honest with you. I've never been that excited about Rodriguez. He kind of had that one season with Pittsburgh, half a season really, and then tailed off. He's a guy who always shoots a ton, and then he's never been a great converter. I believe, if my memory serves correctly, he's below a 10% shooting percentage in his career. So it's a guy who can get hot, definitely can pump a bunch of pucks on net. He hasn't even been doing that lately, 251st in shots per 60 his last 5 games. The on-ice stats still looking great because he was playing with terrific players. Still is. He's still playing with Barkov and Reinhart on the top line. But I do think that this is just a limited player in terms of the actual talent here. And so, yeah, you can stream him, but I don't think he's a hold week in, week out. We've talked about that, Blake and I, before on the podcast. So, yeah, I think Rodriguez is definitely worth streaming for this week, given Florida's terrific schedule. But I'm not honestly expecting that he's going to provide incredible numbers this week, especially now that he's off the top power play. Alex Ovechkin, 1 goal, 5 points rather, in his last 5 games. It's kind of curious, Ovechkin turning into a playmaker, I guess, in his old age here. Just about 21 minutes average time on ice, 50th in shots per 60, 8th in shot attempts per 60, 81st in individual scoring chances for per 60. The on ice number is really good, 11th in Corsi 4 per 60, 18th in scoring chances 4 per 60. Just a 66-point pace on the season and not scoring goals, but the underlying stats are all there for Ovechkin. If there is a buy low opportunity, I'm absolutely smashing that with Ovechkin. I don't see any reason why not to. Washington, as I mentioned, seem to be a team on the come up. It seems like they're starting to figure things out. Once that power play starts humming again, Ovechkin starts blasting those one-timers past goalies again, which will happen, mark my words. I think that Ovechkin is going to be every bit the player you drafted him to be this season. Kyle had a comment here, Timo Meier, if not already. Yeah, Meier is a guy, this is honestly not that far off from what I projected him to be. Maybe a little bit more than this I projected for him. He's still 16th in the league in individual scoring chances 4 per 60 and 3rd in the last little bit. He's definitely come on in a big way, but the deployment, it's just never going to be truly elite. And I think that's going to be the real kicker here. He can offset that definitely by being exposed to Hughes on the power play and at even strength. That can definitely happen, and he can exceed my projection for him in that way. But I think that he's going to be just a little bit muted because it seems like they're going to hold his ice time down, just given the absolute wealth of riches they have in their top 6 when everyone's healthy. So, yeah, Meier, a guy that I like a lot, definitely can exceed in when he's given the minutes, but I'm just not convinced he's going to be given those minutes all season long. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him end up the season south of 70 points. That's how I had it projected at the beginning of the season. And it could very well come to pass, just given what we've seen in the early going here. So take that for what it's worth in terms of any action that you're actually going to take. I do think that more goals are coming. He's not going to end up the season with 15 goals, which is his current pace. He's definitely going to get up there, should be around 30 goals at the very least in this situation. But yeah, I just kind of feel like this is a little bit what I expected for Meier. He's run a little bit cold in some respects, definitely on the shooting percentage so far. But overall, I don't know how much higher I really expect Meier to go on the season. His teammate there, Nico Hischier, I didn't actually check for a a new update on Nico Hischier as to when he might return. So you might be able to find that out for yourself faster than I can just scrolling through Twitter here, trying to see if we've got any news on Hischier. I don't see anything new on Hischier there, so unfortunately, I don't have much to add. He was kind of cold to start the season. That's going to happen. Not that concerned unless he comes off the top power play. If and when he does come off the top power play, I'd be pretty concerned for sure, because that is a place where he's going to get a ton of his minutes. He's obviously a center, and so he's not getting exposure to the wonderkind that is Jack Hughes. So he's got to get some of that exposure on the power play. And so that's the thing to really monitor with Hischier. I've never been super on Hischier. He had by far his biggest season last year, and I wondered a little bit how much of that was just true breakout and how much of that might have just been him running pretty hot for the season. Would he be able to replicate that this year? Given how good New Jersey has been and how much depth they have in their forward core, I think that he can do that. But just Nico Hischier as an individual talent, I'm not sold that he's an absolute elite tier talent overall. Buchnevich, I kind of mentioned this, I guess, when talking about Kyrou earlier. Not super concerned. The underlying numbers are not great. 300th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. I do think that'll work his way back. He did come back from injury, so maybe there's something lingering. That would be more concerning to me, is if you think there's a lingering injury issue here that could continue to hold him back from realizing his potential. But the team in general, I think he'll be able to bounce back from pretty clearly. Arturi Lehkonen and Devin Taves from the Avalanche. This is definitely a puzzling one for me. I have Lehkonen in a spot. I don't actually have Taves anywhere, but was relatively bullish, I think, on his prospects this year. Colorado in general has just been kind of weird. They've gotten shut out multiple times. It's been a pretty odd situation. But for Lehkonen and Taves, as long as they're both getting this extreme deployment, like as long as Lehkonen is on the top power play, anybody on the top power play in Colorado, you're going to be pretty interested in all the time. Right now, he's on the McKinnon-Rantanen line and on top power play. Like, I cannot drop that player, no matter how bad he's playing. We've seen him play pretty decently at times. Still on the season, pacing for 57 points, so definitely usable, if not terrific. I do think there are better days ahead for Lehkonen and for Taves, for sure. Last thing before I get out of here, I've got Greg asking, offer Pettersson for Matt Tkachuk Cats League with hits and pims. I would absolutely do that, to be honest with you. Talked about Pettersson and how hot he's been. I definitely think he can be. At this point, I think that my early projection was maybe too low on him. He's had a great start to the season here, but the underlying stats with Pettersson are not that terrific. And so if you can get to Chuck, like these numbers are just very stark differences. If you're looking at the shots for 60 on the season, 7th for Tkachuk, 187th for Pettersson, 342nd for Pettersson in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60, 6th for Tkachuk. 9th for Tkachuk and Corsi, 4 per 60, 122nd for Pettersson. 103rd in scoring chances, 4 per 60 for Pettersson, 2nd for Matthew Tkachuk. I would absolutely smash any deal where I get Tkachuk for Elias Pettersson, and especially I would smash it twice in a Cats League with hits and pims. So there you have it. All right, folks. Well, that is covering all the players that I had listed here. So that is going to be it for this one. While you're here, if you want to get your players, your puzzling players in for next week, then you should absolutely check out the show description and get in there and join the Apples and Genos Discord server, and you'll get a quick notification sometime mid-Monday next week where I ask for people to submit their puzzling players. You can get yours in there, and if other people agree, I'll definitely see it and get it onto this list for all of these weeks that I'm doing this. As I mentioned, I'm actually not doing it next week. I'm going to a football game, actually the first NFL football game I've ever been to in person. So I'm excited about that, but that will keep you away from this particular show next week. I'll have something else coming out in its place, but yeah, I won't see all your lovely faces or numbers, as the case may be, as I go live here. and next week. If you're looking for specific help with your fantasy team, you can join the Apples and Genos Patreon. $5 a month gets you guaranteed answers to all your questions. That's been popping off here in the early season. It's been tough for me to keep up, to be quite honest with you, but I love it. I love helping people out with their fantasy teams and their questions. So keep those coming and get in there if you need that kind of specific help. And definitely go check out the daily summaries Mark Barber's posting on the Apples and Genos website. Those are terrific. He's actually added a weekly summary. The first one debuted today. We're going to keep tweaking and refining. If you've got suggestions for any stats that you'd like to see on a weekly basis, you can definitely hit up Mark himself or talk to me, and I'll pass it along. But definitely, we're trying to provide something pretty unique, I think, and pretty valuable. I really like the format and the ease of readability that Mark's been able to put into those posts, and I hope that it's been really valuable for everybody who's been using it. I think it's just terrific content. All right, folks, that is going to be it for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for this podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. And that's going to be it, folks. Much love.